Hello YouTubers. It's a crisp Monday morning in the summertime. What you see out the window is the view heading southeast, or actually southwest, out of the window of a Baron 58 parked at First Flight KFFA off the coast of North Carolina, where of course all flights started. The purpose of this video this morning is to test recording and conditions to fly to Newport News and a bit about careers in aviation. So I've already done my pre-flight. Cabin door is closed. Battery switch
November
goes to
01 X-ray Papa. Y heading
And that's a
250.
problem. So we'll take care of that problem by getting rid of the intrusive ATC, which is at this moment in time not necessary. And we'll resume the flight. All right, we're back active. Right this moment, we're going to turn the ignitions both to on. Now, there should have been no reaction there, but I have now solved that problem. I'm going to take the fuel pumps, turn them both on at this moment in time. They're not doing anything at all. And we're going to move the throttle to wide open. There should be no movement in fuel flow, and there isn't. So what we're going to do now is turn on the beacon and the panel, even though that's should not be, as we described it. The prop sync and avionics master are both off. And now we're ready to advance the mixtures. Full rich, and now you'll notice that we're getting fuel flow in both motors. 1, 2, 3. Throttles come to off. No more flow. We turn the pumps off. Clear right. We have a quick look. And there's no problem to the right, and so hold the starter switch and we get a light off. Looking for oil pressure, and in the meantime, while that's warming up a little bit, we're going to start that alternator. Okay, and the prop synchro is going one way only, interestingly enough. Okay, now we're going to start number 1. We have rotation. That alternator is on, and we have some temperature, some pressure, and we're building into the green. We're going to go down now and make sure that the cowl flaps are fully open, which they are now. I'm going to take the trim and run it all the way back so we know where we're starting from. Okay, now we're going to run it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half. All right, I have leaned the mixture slightly. We're going to turn on the avionics master, and we're going to input our trip. First, we're going to hit direct to, using the small arrow, we're going to make the airports visible, and we're going to Papa Hotel Foxtrot. It's almost always a knee-jerk to go to that next step. Echo Foxtrot. Okay, that shows us northeast, Newport News, Williamsburg International. We enter it once, activate it. And now we have a course line drawn. And I'm going to move the range out to 100 miles, which gives us 50 in view. And that works for me. Now we're going to minimize it by clicking on the box. All right. Our takeoff runway is going to be runway 20. And our heading, should have picked that up. Direct heading is 341. So we're going to set that up in advance. So if all else fails, we know what we're doing. All right, now we've got our trim, pitch axis, cowl flaps open. Mixtures are set. We have sufficient fuel for the flight, about 2 hours worth. And we're not going to be flying that far. We're going to kill the yaw damper. We're going to put, the flight director is going to come on. We're going to select an up attitude, although I don't think it'll do us any good. All right. We'll start our transponder and our squawk code for today in honor of a good friend of mine. It's going to be 2261. And we're going to be going to 375, so I'll put that in the ADF as a helper backup. Okay, we have vacuum source. Our temperature is 80 degrees on the ground. And now we're going to announce ourselves on the local airport. And for the purpose of this mission, we're going to say it's 122. .80. Selected in the #1 radio. Okay. First flight traffic, 45 X-ray Sierra taxi, back taxi to runway 20, first flight. Right. Won't take us long to build up any speed in this airplane as it's producing too much power at idle. I'm going to raise our vision up just a bit as it would be in the cockpit. We're going to miss that parked 172, and then we're going to re-announce our back taxi. First flight traffic, 45 X-ray Sierra, a Baron. We're back taxiing runway 20 for takeoff. First flight. A lot of what I wanted to talk about in this video is for people who are interested in careers in aviation. If you come to it through this means, through a simulation program, whether it's X-Plane or FSX or Prepared 3D or some of the others, it is possible to learn a lot about flying and practice flying in these low-cost, high-value simulations. My personal favorite is, of course, X-Plane, having come up through Microsoft Flight Safety from the very beginning. While it served its purpose in its day, there were some serious limitations of all sorts with the program. And as we come to taxi, I'll simply mention that there are several ways to get your pilot's license, and that we will talk about them more in future episodes as we progress in the series. This is planned to be a multi-part series on careers in aviation. Okay, 45 X-ray Sierra, let's clear the active first flight. Holding short 20 for departure. As you approach the takeoff point, I'm going to do a real quick run-up for those of you. For the purists in our midst, I'm going to take it up to about make sure it's on full 1.0 parking brake. Mixture goes all the way to rich. And we'll get the drop, go back to both. Of course, there's no way to limit this without hitting the starter button, because it's rather crude in the way you do that. And now we'll assume the other one is fine too. I'm going to exercise the props one at a time. Watch for RPM drops. We get a good drop on the right and the left. This is changing the oil in the prop hub, which sort of guarantees that it's now we're dropping both. And now back to full prop, and that assumes that they're in sync. All right, now we'll bring our throttle back. In a twin-engine aircraft, it's really essential that you have a couple of things in mind when you get ready to take off. One is that anytime before liftoff, you should be able to retard both throttles and stop straight ahead on the runway. That's the goal. Once you reach flying speed and blue line after liftoff, it becomes a little less problematic. You identify the dead engine, verify the dead engine, bank into the good engine about 2.5 degrees, and continue to climb at blue line, not above and not below. Get whatever you can, but that's not going to be easy. If you're between red line and blue line, your best chance is to land straight ahead and take what you get. It's not pretty, it's not a helpful thing to say, but that's what's going to be your options. You'll never get it to climb unless you're at blue line. Extraordinary pilot skills aside, you'll still never be able to get it to climb. So, mixture rich, props forward, idle, make your announcement. We see the wind sockets blowing at a slight angle from the right once you line up on the runway. And if we don't get into the clouds, I'll try and do a circle of first flight so you can have a look at it. And so now here we go. First flight traffic is 45 X-ray taking runway 20 for departure. First flight. Okay. This particular aircraft would be steered by pedals on the floor and not a tiller. Unfortunately, I do not have pedals, so I'm using a tiller, and once enough airspeed is maintained over the surfaces, I'll switch to rudder and whatever authority I have there. In this particular case, go to full power, check your instruments, make sure everything's producing power. Okay, manifold pressure, power, it's trying to release, and here we go. First flight traffic, 45 X-ray departing runway 20, first flight. 60 knots, airspeed is alive, takeoff power is set. Okay, I can't hold it with the steering any longer, and it's trying to go all over the place. Okay, we're airborne. Enough of that foolishness. Okay, maintaining blue line, positive rate, gear up. Trim some more now, maintain about a 115 knot climb, and slowly bank to the left. Flaps up, gear up. First power reduction to 25 inches. Pull comes back to 25 for climb. Okay, and now I'm going to look out the window here and show you where we just departed. So we turn back around slowly. It's very difficult to do. And there's first flight right there under our wing, and between our engine and our wing on the nacelle. We're going to be going into the clouds momentarily, which means I'm going to be flying on instruments. We're going to come back around to our heading. Make sure we've switched to GPS. And now as we start to go on our heading, bring the course line in line with our course and fly back to it. Select nav on our flight director, and now we'll continue our climb. And what we're doing now is we're trying to get ourselves back in alignment before we go through the clouds. Strictly speaking, this would be an IFR flight unless I stay below the clouds. I've essentially leveled off here just to get back on course. Take a small cut of our autopilot is now on. Stand by till we hit 2,000 feet. And then we will lock our altitude with the autopilot. We have joined our course. And while we're climbing, we're not going to accelerate all that much. See if this will keep us out of the clouds. I'm fairly sure at this point it's not going to. Nope, we hit the clouds as we come up on 2,000 feet. So I'm going to increase our climb rate to 1,000 feet a minute. And you just watch me announce one thing and do the other. Now we're going to go to hopefully where we'll bust out. If we don't. Okay, as you climb, you'll notice your manifold pressure decreases, so I'm going to pretty that back up to 25 inches of manifold pressure. And I'm going to make our RPM 2300. Which will reduce the noise just a bit. And as we come to the top, I'm going to level off at about 2,750 feet. Okay, altitude is now set at 2,750 approximately. We should accelerate and continue on our flight plan towards Newport News. I already have pre-selected the ILS into Newport News, which we will probably descend into and make an approach and landing there. At this point, you're going to lean your aircraft to a proper mixture setting, which is about 25 degrees cool of peak, which is that thicker line right there on your EGT. And you're doing about 18 gallons an hour. And 2,700 feet on course. Let's have a look and see. see, we're 27 minutes out, 70 miles on course. And of course, what you're trying to do now is look outside. And there's a fair amount of turbulence this morning at this altitude, and that would correlate with the low clouds. Careers in aviation is, of course, what the purpose of this video is. And there are two major paths into aviation. One is through general aviation, and the other is through the airline system. But before you choose a path, you need to start your training for a career in aviation. The biggest thing you have to do is find someone to teach you. And probably the best way, not the only way, but the best way, is to find an instructor who has multiple years of experience and students who have gone on to become airline captains and corporate jet captains and other types of general aviation pilots. So his experience will be broad enough not just to teach you to fly, but to teach you about the decision-making process. Quite frankly, there are a lot of people that hold pilot's license that are nothing more than mechanical flyers. And while that's not the best and most desirable thing, it is a reality. The United States Air Force takes in pilots and they train them and spend millions of dollars on them before they have a pilot's license, which sadly is not really the way to do it. There is it needs to be a better screening process for that kind of an investment. But that's a whole different story, and I'll leave that there. If you find an experienced flight instructor, he will urge you to get going on your writtens that you have to take for an American license, for your private pilot's license, or PPL as they call it in Europe. And in America, we're very fortunate the airplanes and the gasoline are much cheaper, and so the mass majority of the world's pilots are trained here in America, which I can't say is a bad thing, although it takes a lot of jobs. A lot of them remain here and take jobs in the United States. And that's political, and I didn't intend to be political. However, now as we pass through some clouds, which is, for the purpose of this flight, illegal, and I shouldn't be doing it, but as this is a aircraft-free airspace, we've now popped out into some better visibility. And in the remaining 20 minutes, before I get busy again, I'll continue on with career advice. My background is I found NASA's chief test pilot for 50 years as a flight instructor. I bandied him until he would teach me my private license. And so I went out and did all of my FAA writtens, all the way through instrument and commercial and type rating ATP before I flew my first hour. Now, I was lucky enough to have a friend who was very generous with his access to airplanes. In fact, I had quite a lot of friends that helped me because they liked me. And it helped me later on to be in touch with people who needed pilot services and had their own airplanes, including jets. So part of what you'll have to do if you go into general aviation is be likable, be professional, and try to find people that will support you and you can support them. It's a two-way street. So if you decide to go into the airline business, you will of course have to follow the path that I laid out to get a private license. And whether you choose a school that's going to charge you $50,000 to $75,000 to get you going, that you'll have to take a note out for unless you're just amazingly wealthy beyond belief. When I started flying in the mid-'80s, it was much, much cheaper. Airplane and gasoline for an hour was like $35, between $20 and $35 an hour. And the instructor was about $10 an hour. And as I said, I was getting the best education that you could get in aviation from a former NASA test pilot and division chief. So this is something that I would say for both people is a very important step. And I just demonstrated that it's quite possible for you to do something that you think you've done, and unless you verify it, you have not done. So there's a small lesson there. The aircraft was not flying as fast as I thought it should be at the power setting. And when I went back to check, my cursory check showed that I had pushed the landing gear retraction button, but it failed to actuate. So I was flying along with the gear down at 153 knots, which turns out to be about the maximum speed with the landing gear extended and the cowl flaps open. So now we're accelerating to a much faster speed, and we're down to 18 minutes to touchdown at our current speed. You will of course notice that it becomes longer as we slow down for the approach. However, we've got a nice view, a nice airplane, and there's the part of the Outer Banks and part of the inland waterway that goes between the Atlantic Ocean and the North Carolina inland section. Give you a little bit better look as we're on autopilot. The Baron is a great little twin-engine airplane. It's not necessarily inexpensive to operate. And there's an example of a nice little airport in X-Plane 11. Right now we're currently doing 43 frames per second. 2987 is the sea level temperature pressure, and 15 degrees is the sea level temperature, although from what we showed before inside, it doesn't match up necessarily. We'll do a quick flyby and then go back to the cockpit. And of course, as I start this video, I live next to a golf course, and the lovely moronic golf course people on Monday come by and decide to cut the grass as I make this video. Our airspeed now is up to 172 knots, and we've got a ground speed of 185. And I'm going to simulate listening to the ATIS and see if it's available now. It really doesn't matter. Okay. The ATIS did play out for me. It's clear. Clear skies, 2980. Landing and departing on runway 20. And that's what we'll do. As it looks like we're going to have a clear approach, we're going to fly across midfield, 1,500 feet. Slowing to gear speed of 153. Fly a downwind, come around and land on 20, and taxi to Rick Aviation, one of the people that was very helpful for me in my career. I just momentarily had to clear my throat, which is not unusual for me this time of day. As we continue, once you secure your flight instructor, you want to make sure that you do everything to make his job easier by paying attention, reading ahead, learning everything you can about the aircraft, the flight rules, and what's required of you in the side of aviation that you're interested in, and make his day easier by letting him know what your path is and asking him for his ideas. As we speak now, in 2017, there are still a lot of pilots that have been on furlough ever since 2011, 2012, after September 11th. This is sad because the market for regular general aviation pilots was partially filled by airline captains who couldn't wait. They had bills to pay and didn't have any income as a result of being laid off. You can't blame them. And the people that hired them, you can't blame them either, because they needed pilots. And if you can get a 27,000-hour airline pilot or a 1,500-hour guy off the street that barely has his commercial, rating, then you've got some choices to make. Now, once again, the weather has changed, although it had a 2-hour cycle update in X-plane. This is a continuing problem that I have expressed to Laminar Research that, anyway, your possibilities are endless if you're willing to work and to be professional. If you decide to go in the general aviation side, there are many avenues open to you and many ways to earn as you build your hours into an acceptable amount of flight time to get you to the airlines. You will be able to fly as an instructor. You can get your instructor's rating and teach. Now, most airlines recognize that that's not real flying, that's not any weather, generally speaking, except some instrument training, and it's not really any point-to-point real live weather situations. You're usually flying in decent weather and instructing. If you are able to work yourself into some sort of a service job as becoming a co-pilot in a 135 operation, which is air charter, you can build hours there and learn and increase your ratings and get familiar with the system as it works with the FAA, which includes getting into taking check rides and preparation and working in the system at a professional level. And as I apologize for my gravelly voice this morning, the stream of consciousness as this occurs to me while I'm flying is pretty interesting to myself. May not be to you. Hopefully that you'll get some information that you can use from my miscellaneous ramblings. And things like flying checks at night, that sort of work has gone away. There is air tour work. But primarily you want to try and get yourself into a relationship with an FBO, a fixed base operator, that they sell gasoline and do training. And sometimes by being in their instructor pool, they can move you along into charter. And that would be a desirable point for you to be able to get in and build more time. And now monitoring my aircraft a little bit here, I see that I've just gone a little bit hot on my EGT, so I'm going to bump that down and get it back. Fatten up the mixture just a bit so we don't hurt the engines. They're both running in the green, cylinder head and oil temperature, and oil pressures are good. And we're now about 30 some miles out. Let's take a more detailed look. We're exactly 30 miles out, 10 minutes away. We've sort of skirted through Norfolk's airspace, below Norfolk's airspace, so we really didn't need to talk to them. And the big thing that I'm not doing while I'm telling you this is, you need to be scanning the sky at all times for aircraft. And the best way to do that is in about 30-degree swipes, holding your head still, your eyes still, and seeing if anything moves. Because if something doesn't move, it's on a collision course, and you need to assess how far away, how much bigger it's getting, and what you're going to need to, get out of its way. If you've noticed or done any flying in the real world, birds always dive if they sense a problem and a conflict. So, as a last resort, you pick up airspeed and turn away from the target that is making a closure with you, and that is your best chance. But the best thing I can teach you is to use that Mark 1 eyeball and fly as if always somebody's within 5 miles of you. And at 30 miles an hour, we're going to descend to 1,500 feet. I'm going to do that without a power reduction and just watch my temperatures. Since it's gone back to being a smooth morning, this flight started at about 8:30 this morning, local time, Eastern Daylight Time. And we're descending about 500 feet a minute. We'll probably not push into the yellow zone, which is the part of the airspeed that range that is cautionary, up to 220, which is to not exceed, because you can damage and disable and even ruin the airframe. We're going to fly over a unique look here into downtown Norfolk, part of the Naval Repair Yard, the business district, and what's known as Waterside. Also, the Jacques Cousteau Museum is there, and the Naval Piers as we approach Newport News, Williamsburg. Myself, this is very familiar to what the weather in the Newport News microclimate is. This area is fed in the summertime by water that it picks up at Lake Gaston. All of the weather systems move from the northwest to the, from the northwest to the, I'll try that one more time, from the southwest to the northeast. And by virtue of that, the weather comes in from the Smithfield side and reports itself as rain coming across the James River Bridge into Newport News and Williamsburg. Okay, we're at 1,700 feet now. We've crossed over Waterside and downtown Norfolk, and we're headed towards more piers on our way across. The weather has again decided to change, with or without our permission. I'm going to tilt down now to get ready for a 1,500 foot level off by selecting altitude. Altitude select. And is confirmed, and we're leveling off. Okay, and we did make it up to the top of the green arc. Now we're going to change our range and bring it in. We're 15 miles from the airport, and we're going to be entering will look like a straight in for 2-0 initially. Once we cross into the peninsula side, we're going to pass just outside of Langley Air Force Base, KLFI, and at this point, as we get to Langley, we'll start reducing our power, 2 inches of manifold pressure per minute or 2. The cylinders in air-cooled engines are made up of about 5 different metals, and none of which cool at the same rate. So it behooves you to be careful in descents at high speed, watch engine cooling and power reductions because of the heat stress internally in the engines. And what will happen if you don't manage your engines in descent? You will shorten the life of your very expensive cylinders and require overhaul before it's time. And if you're working for someone else, that will not be a resume enhancement if you're constantly destroying engines. Another type of engine that is commonly found, well, not commonly, but found in general aviation, is a geared engine, and you must not let the propellers drive the engines. So if you have a half-decent instructor, he'll be able to take you into more detail in systems and training for those particular types of airplanes. But with the Baron, it's a good sturdy airplane, very rugged, and hopefully you'll be able to build your twin engine time eventually. Okay, very shortly, as we run a beam of Langley Air Force Base, which we should be able to see here momentarily through the window. It is, shall we say, a bit murky. All right. It's now 1 to 2 o'clock. We're going to make a power reduction. Okay, and our weather has once again changed. We're going to go to about 23 inches and halt. Okay, Newport News is dead ahead. I'm now going to move our cursor for the heading to 020 as closely as I can. It's 010 and now to 020. The aircraft is starting to slow. We're looking for 153 knots. All right, now we're going to engage heading mode now, and the aircraft will immediately start to bank. We're going to cross just outside of runway 725 on a heading that will deliver us to a downwind with a power reduction. We'll add a little bit of mixture in. About 20 inches. And Newport News Tower, this is 45 X-ray Sierra. We're entering a left downwind for runway 20. Roger. This will be a full stop. You could, of course, ask for the option. How many of you in the simulator world know what an option is? Well, I'll tell you. The option is that you're clear for a low approach, a touch and go, a full stop, and so when you request landing clearance, they expect you to stop and turn off the runway. That helps them with planning. And what we're looking for is 153 knots, which we're slowly getting to. One more power reduction. Manifold pressure down to just about 17 inches will get us there, as you can see. The other thing we're looking for is to look out the back window here and see the airport at about a 45-degree angle behind us. And that'll be our key to make our turn in. I'm going to turn our cursor now, our course indicator, into a runway indicator. At this point, I'm going to lower the landing gear. gear lever is down, 3 green, and indicating. I'm going to cancel the autopilot, make a slow turn towards the runway, about 15 degrees. Trimming up and holding our altitude will help us get to flap speed, which we will do as we get the runway in sight and our sure landing. At this point, we're slowing to our 120 look around for the airport and the runway. Okay, and as you can see, there's the runway. We're going to be coming out on a heading that will deliver us to the end of the runway. More than just hopefully. Alright, at about 11 o'clock, I have the runway in sight. We're making a slow descent. Take our manifold pressure down a little bit, and I'll fully enrich the mixture as I get on a runway heading course. Along about now, I would get a call from ATC, Tower at Newport News Williamsburg International, which I know as Patrick Henry Field, Patrick Henry Tower. Okay, we can in fact add 1 notch of flaps. Selected and indicating. We've now moved into the flap band. We're going to manage our speed and altitude to the end of the runway, maintaining blue line. Okay, we're about 600 feet a minute. 500 to 600 feet. It's going to yield us with a good approach angle. We're going to hold our landing flaps until landing is assured. We're going to transition to blue line when we add our flaps, and then slow from 100 about to 80 in preparation for landing, and then bleed off the airspeed over the runway and try and make a nice smooth touchdown. Okay, I'm checking my tiller to make sure that it is centered. We've got a pretty decent lineup, although we are high. Landing flaps selected and indicated. We're approaching blue line. Okay, I've picked up the fixed distance markers. I'm not going to go to idle power until I'm just over the runway. Okay, I'm trimming out now. Trimming. Slowing the airspeed. All right. We have on tiller control. We've made a nice touchdown. Throttles are at idle. We're braking now. And we're just going to roll on up to the next exit. While we're accelerating away, I've identified the flaps and I'm retracting them. Mixtures are full rich. Props are full forward. Got minimum thrust on to make the next turnoff. Well, I've got time. This transponder is now off. I'm going to taxi, as I said before. I'm going to slow down just a bit. You don't want to taxi at much more than a walking pace in these aircraft because tires are not cheap and flat spotting them ruins them. That's a couple of $100 lost every time you flat spot a tire. Okay. This is a fairly reasonable representation. Okay, I would be in touch with ground at this point, clearing the runway, and they would ask where I was parking, and I'm saying I'm going to Rick Aviation's maintenance hangar, which is at the far end in the northwest corner. And they would have given me permission now. 5 X-Ray Sierra, you're cleared as requested. And I'm going to taxi on the outer taxiway. And again, I mentioned Rick Aviation as their fixed base operator. There have been some unusual and quite interesting users on the field. If you see the F-4 Phantoms, those are the closest thing they could come to the MiGs and Vigan aircraft that are used by a military challenge company that is based at Newport News. And you can see that even at idle throttle, I'm getting way too much ground speed. On the left is Rick Aviation. I'm going to come down here to this next intersection and turn and park next to a pair of 172s. In fact, I'm going to park next to the door of the hangar. So I hope that my thoughts about general aviation and airline careers has been helpful. I will do more on the career path and choices and more specifics with time. Well, now I'm going to line up and shut down here at Rick Aviation, that you can see out here to your right. And now I'm going to do my shutdown procedure. We're going to go by shutting down the avionics master first. We're now going to turn off the beacon, take the throttles to idle. That will essentially kill both engines. Now that we've done that, we're going to go back and kill our alternator and our master switch. The old saying is mixture, mags, and master switch. And that basically shows us to parking in front of Rick Aviation at Newport News Williamsburg International. Call sign Kilo Papa Hotel Foxtrot. Hope you've enjoyed the content. If you do, like it, subscribe, and come back for future parts about careers in aviation and flying in general. Thank you.